The old brick bungalow on Willow Avenue had been my sanctuary for the past 4 years. It wasn't just a house, but a living memory of Grandpa Alistair. I remember the day he left it to me. Not in some cold, formal will reading, but in a whispered promise as he lay in his bed. For you, my boy, because you stayed. My younger sister, Caroline, the family's resident golden child, had moved to the city years ago, pursuing a life of silk blouses, trendy restaurants, and a career in interior design. To her, the house was just an old building. To me, it was a legacy. I'd always been the one to answer the call, the one who showed up when no one else would. When Dad lost his job at the factory, I was 19, working double shifts at a gas station to help with the mortgage. When Caroline's tuition was due, I paid the first semester without a second thought. I covered her rent when she took an unpaid internship to find herself. My parents, Arthur and Eleanor, always viewed me as the dependable one, the family's invisible safety net. They took my support for granted. My efforts were not acts of love, but expected duties. The tension started to build last fall. During a seemingly innocuous Sunday dinner, the roast beef was dry, the green beans were overcooked, and Caroline, as usual, arrived late. Her voice a whirlwind of excitement about a new property she was hoping to buy. "It's the one. You guys," she gushed, showing them a digital rendering on her phone. Arched doorways, a chef's kitchen, and a walk-in pantry, bigger than my current apartment. Mom's eyes lit up, and Dad nodded along, as if they were already part of the deal. That's when the family discussion began. Mom cleared her throat, a familiar signal that a sacrifice was about to be requested. "Darling," she began, her tone soft but firm, "we've been talking about Willow Avenue. My stomach sank. It's a lot for one person to handle. Don't you think? The upkeep, the property taxes. It's a burden," she said. Caroline chimed in. "It's basically a free house. Owen, you could do something generous with it." Dad leaned forward, his voice a low, reasonable hum. "The smart move is to sell it and put the equity toward Caroline's down payment. Interest rates are high. Timing is everything." I just laughed, thinking they were joking. "Grandpa Alistair left that house to me. I live there," I said, a little too loudly. The laughter died, and Mom's face hardened. "Stop being so selfish. Owen, that house isn't just yours, it's a family asset. Either you help your sister, or you're not my son anymore." The words hung in the air, cold and unforgiving. For the next few weeks, I was bombarded with demands, texts in the family chat with no question marks. Only commands. "Don't forget the house key Sunday. Realtor needs to measure windows. 2 o'clock sharp." There was no asking, just a plan already in motion. On Thursday, Mom showed up with blue painter's tape, marking off imaginary flaws. On Saturday, Dad arrived with a tape measure, walking through the living room as if it were already Caroline's. Sunday morning, Caroline herself waltzed in, phone in hand, saying, "When you sell, you have to knock this wall down. It has to be open concept." That night, my world shifted. I changed the locks. When Mom showed up the next morning, her tears were a mix of rage and disbelief. "How could you be so cruel? Houses are just boxes," she sobbed. But Willow Avenue wasn't a box to me. It was the last place my grandfather had remembered my name. It held the echoes of our shared moments. The scent of motor oil in the garage, the worn workbench where he taught me to mend things. I knew I needed a strategy, a way out of this emotional hostage situation. And I knew exactly who to call. Part 2, I knew I needed a lifeline. Someone outside of this twisted family dynamic. My thoughts immediately went to Aunt Nora, Grandpa Alistair's estranged younger sister. She and Mom hadn't spoken in years. Ever since a massive argument over my grandparents' inheritance, Mom had accused Nora of trying to manipulate Grandpa, while Nora had simply said, "Elaine, You just hate the word no. It was a conflict I'd watched from the sidelines. And now, it felt like the only way forward. We met at a small diner off the highway. The kind with sticky tables and bottomless coffee. Nora slid into the booth. Her hair, a rebellious shock of white. Her eyes as sharp as ever. She listened patiently as I recounted the family's demands, the emotional blackmail, and the audacious assumption that my home was theirs to sell. I showed her the texts, the marked-up photos of my living room, the way they'd already started treating my house like a construction project. When I finished, she didn't mince words. Your mother hates the word no. Arthur avoids conflict. And Caroline, she thinks every wish is a need. They see you as a resource, not a person, she said, her voice low and steady. So, what do you want? Owen. He swallowed hard. The coffee suddenly bitter. I want peace, I said, the words feeling foreign and fragile. I want to keep the house. But I don't want to fight with my family for the rest of my life. I don't want Willow Avenue to become a trophy for Caroline's Instagram feed. Nora's gaze was intense. And then a slow smile spread across her face. Then sell it to me, she said, her words dropping like a perfectly placed puzzle piece. I've been saving for years. I've always wanted a place with a yard and a garage. I'll pay cash, no strings. No drama. My hands started to shake. If I sell it to you, Mom will explode. She'll never speak to me again. Nora simply shrugged. She already doesn't speak to me, let her keep not speaking. But from farther away, this is your chance to get out of this ridiculous game they've been playing with you. It's a clean break. A fresh start. You get the money. I get a home. And they get a lesson in boundaries. The idea was a revelation. It was a bold move. A final act of rebellion against the family who had always taken from me. We closed on the sale just 2 days later. The paperwork was simple, and the price was fair. Nora was a woman of her word. I packed up only what mattered to me, Grandpa's worn-out pocket knife, his old coffee percolator, and a faded Polaroid of my mom from when she was 22, laughing on the Willow Avenue porch. By Sunday, a quiet sense of finality settled over me. I drove over and parked a block away. Watching the scene unfold, Mom's new SUV pulled up, followed by a sleek Lexus with a top 1% realtor sticker on the back. Caroline hopped out in a sundress, her phone already out for a potential story post. Dad carried a folder of documents, his face a mask of false importance. They marched up to the front door, in a confident procession ready to claim what they believed was theirs. The realtor rang the bell. The door opened, and there stood Aunt Nora, wearing one of Grandpa Alistair's old flannel shirts. Paint on her hands. Behind her, a potted plant sat on the hall table. A rug unrolled on the floor. The house, which had felt so empty for so long, suddenly looked alive again. Mom's jaw dropped. What is this? She stammered, her face turning a furious shade of red. Hello, Elaine, Nora said, her voice as polite as a formal invitation. She held up the deed, the paper crisp and new. This is my house now. Part 3. The silence was a physical thing, thick and suffocating. As Nora's words sunk in, Caroline's jaw dropped. The perfect smile she had so carefully plastered on her face, crumbling. You sold it to her, she shrieked, pointing at me. I stepped out from behind Nora's SUV, the late afternoon sun glinting off my car's window. My voice was calm, almost detached. I did. It's done. Mom's face was a study in betrayal. She pointed a trembling finger at me. The lipstick, a stark red slash against her pale skin. You betrayed us, she accused, her voice shaking. You turned your back on family. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the faded Polaroid of her. I looked at the laughing young woman in the photo, and then back at the furious one standing before me. A lifetime of resentment seemed to bridge the gap. No, I didn't, I said, my voice steady. I ended the manipulation. Grandpa left this house to me because I stayed. I decided it ends here. Dad. Ever, the mediator turned enabler. Tried to salvage the situation. After everything we've done for you. This feels unfair. Owen. Unfair, I scoffed. Is it unfair when I paid for your car repairs, when I covered Caroline's student loans, when I canceled my own trips, because you needed me again? This isn't unfair. Dad. It's a consequence. Caroline. Sensing the tide turning. Let out a disparity. Childish wail. I needed that house. Nora crossed her arms. A small smile playing on her lips. You don't need what was never yours. Dear. With that, she simply closed the door. The sound a soft. Final click. The porch light, which had been off, blinked on behind her, illuminating the shocked, frozen tableau on the lawn. The fallout was instant and brutal. Over the next 48 hours, my phone became a relentless noise machine of missed calls, 37 in total. My parents' friends, my cousins, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. They were reaching out. Mom took to Facebook, posting passive-aggressive updates about children who value money over blood and ungrateful sons who abandon their own. Caroline, in a moment of utter disbelief, sent me a Venmo request for $105,000, with a note that read, House fund. I declined it without a second thought. There was no anger. Just a clean, quiet finality. I was no longer their automatic teller machine. I was just me. And for the first time in my life, that felt like peace. A week later, I received a group text. Family meeting. Everyone at the house tonight. I almost ignored it. But something in me snapped. I wanted to see their faces. To witness the fallout of my rebellion. When I arrived, the house looked like a postcard, a wreath on the door. Windows glowing. This time, I didn't knock. They were all there. Mom. Her face blotchy and pale. Dad. Pacing by the fireplace. Caroline. Sprawled on the couch. Scrolling through her phone. Owen. Mom cried. Her voice strained. This has gone too far. We're family. We don't turn our backs on each other. You did, I said. And the room went silent. Part 4. The room froze. The air was so thick with unspoken tension it was hard to breathe. The moment you shut me out on Christmas Eve. The moment you all laughed about me behind my back. That's when you turned your back on me, I said. My voice cutting through the quiet. That's not true. Owen, my mom whispered. Her eyes wide with feigned innocence. I knew this moment would come. I'd been preparing for it. I pulled out my phone. Found the video I'd recorded. And hit play. Ethan's voice crackled from the speaker. Atini. Muffled sound that filled the silent room. He still thinks paying rent means he automatically gets included. It's ridiculous. I had recorded the call with my brother. Knowing something wasn't right. I'd captured the final conversation when they locked me out. When he forgot to hang up and I heard his cruel, dismissive words. The color drained from my mom's face. Dad's jaw clenched. And Caroline, who'd been so sure of her power, jumped up, stammering. I didn't mean it like that. You know I didn't. You meant exactly what you all think. I cut in. My voice low and steady. I was never a son. I was never a brother. I was a wallet. And I'm done. My dad. The quiet one. The one who always avoided conflict. Finally boomed. You think you're better than us because you have money. Is that it? No. I said. A cold clarity settling over me. I don't think I'm better. I think I deserve respect. But I'll settle for peace. My mom's voice broke. We love you. Owen. You can't just walk away. I looked at her. At Dad's clenched fists. At Caroline's twisted scowl. And for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. You don't love me, I said, the words feeling like a final release. You love what I can do for you. Me, I was just convenient. I turned and walked out, leaving the stunned silence and the echoes of my words hanging in the air. No one followed. Weeks later, a neighbor, Mrs. Albright, caught me by my mailbox. Did you hear? She whispered. Your parents lost the house. Your dad couldn't keep up with the mortgage. I nodded, my heart unmoved. Yeah, I heard. I had heard through the grapevine that my dad was now working as a grocery clerk, a humbling fall from grace. I didn't wish them ill. But I didn't wish them well, either. I was just neutral. The final straw, the one that proved my decision was right, came in a text from my mom. We lost everything. It read, Caroline won't even speak to me. Please. Owen. We were wrong. Come home. I stared at the words. My thumb hovered over the screen for a long moment. Then, with a quiet certainty, I tapped delete. There was no anger. No guilt, just a clean, quiet freedom. The text. The pleas. The promises. They all felt like a foreign language. For the first time in my life, I wasn't drowning. I wasn't their automatic teller machine. I wasn't their sponsor. I was just me. And that felt like peace. Part 5. My parents told me to sit at the corner table during my dad's birthday after I flew 9 hours and paid for their hotel. My sister smirked. No one actually likes you. They just feel bad. My mom nodded. You're not even supposed to be here. Last spring, I flew from Vancouver to Toronto. A 9-hour flight with a 2-hour layover. For my dad's 65th birthday. The round-trip ticket cost me over $1,000. I also covered the hotel bill, 3 rooms at a downtown hotel, for over $1,500. My sister, Clara, had promised she would handle the restaurant booking. When I landed, no one met me at the airport. There was no welcome home text. No message. Nothing. I just told myself that family was chaotic. But the weirdness started the moment I checked in at the hotel. The clerk asked. Room 607. Right, all paid by Ethan, my parents. Standing right beside me. Looked surprised. As if it hadn't occurred to them that I was footing the bill. I swallowed my annoyance, reminding myself, it's Dad's birthday, don't be petty. I dropped my bags and changed into a nice blazer. The dinner was at a trendy Italian place downtown. I had confirmed the reservation myself weeks earlier after Clara forgot to finalize it. 10 people. A private section. And a prepaid deposit of $900. When I walked in, the hostess led me toward the back. Everyone was already seated at a long table under a sparkling chandelier. Clara raised her wine glass, a small smirk on her face, and pointed to a single empty chair shoved near the swinging kitchen door. That's you, Ethan, she said. I laughed nervously. That's the only seat. Mom didn't blink. Well, we didn't know if you were even coming. You didn't reply in the group chat for a few days. I confirmed my flight twice, I said, a wave of heat rising in my chest. Clara leaned back in her chair, a smug smile on her face. Don't act so surprised. No one actually likes you. Ethan, they just feel bad for you. The room went silent. Forks froze in midair. Then, my mom, with a slow nod of her head, said, You're not even supposed to be here. The words hit harder than I could have imagined. For years, I had been the family's invisible ATM. The one they called when they needed money or a favor. But never the one they truly included. He swallowed hard. And stood up. And raised my glass. I need 20 seconds. I said loudly. And every table around us went quiet. I counted out loud. 5 seconds. My cousin, Liam, slowly lowered his phone. 10. My uncle shifted uncomfortably in his seat. At 20, my mom's hand froze on her wine glass. she whispered. It's true. I told them everything. About how, at 19, when Dad lost his factory job, I picked up double shifts at the gas station to wire $600 home every week. How, when Clara's tuition at Western University was overdue, I paid the $4,200 for her first semester. I told them about the car repairs, the emergency dentist bills, and the endless stream of money I had sent to keep them afloat. I had the receipts. Literally, screenshots, transfers, and credit card statements all saved in a folder on my phone. What are you doing? Keeping score, my uncle. Rob scoffed. Not at first, I shot back. But gratitude expired a long time ago. I set down a folded printout from my blazer pocket, 30 pages stapled together. A digital graveyard of my generosity. I flipped to a random page. July 2021. $3,000 for Clara's birthday trip to Bali. Promised to split it, never saw a dime. August 2022. $850 for Mom's emergency dentist bill. Never reimbursed. Clara's face turned red. That wasn't my fault, she stammered. March 2023. Mom was stuck at the salon because she couldn't pay. I wired $820 while you were getting highlights and sipping lattes. I looked at them all. My voice steady. And tonight? After I flew 9 hours and covered over $2,400 in hotel rooms and deposits. You stick me by the kitchen door and tell me I'm not supposed to be here. Part 6. Silence. The only sound was the clatter of plates from the serving staff. My dad, ever the one to avoid a scene, finally snapped. Enough. Ethan, you're embarrassing yourself. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Embarrassing myself. I've spent my whole life covering for this family while you all let Clara play the golden child. And now that I'm calling it out, I'm the embarrassment, no one answered. So, I set the printout down on the table in front of Dad. That's every dollar I've spent on you in the past 10 years. Nearly $47,000. Keep it. Consider it my goodbye gift. Mom's voice cracked. Ethan, you're twisting everything. Am I? I pulled out my phone again. Here's the group chat from last week. I scrolled to a message Clara had sent. He'll show up anyway, he always does. Guilt is powerful. Gasps rippled around the table. Clara lunged for her phone. But it was too late. My cousin, Liam, whispered. She posted it to her story by mistake. I saw it before she deleted it. Clara went silent. Her face a mask of shame and fury. I raised my glass one last time. Happy birthday, Dad. Enjoy the bill, it's in your name this time. Then I drained the wine, set the glass down, and walked out. No one followed. The next morning, my phone lit up with over 30 missed calls and dozens of messages. Voicemails from every branch of the family tree, not one of them an apology. Not one mention of the money I had spent on them. Instead, they were filled with accusations. You ruined the night. You embarrassed us. You made your father cry. I didn't reply. Instead, I checked out of the hotel, upgraded my flight to business class, and flew back to Vancouver. For the first time in years, I felt light. Free. The air in the city felt cleaner, and the sky seemed a little bluer. A month later, a text came from my cousin. Liam, you were right. It read, Clara tried to throw a housewarming party, and her card got declined. Half the guests left when the catering bailed. Dad didn't even show up. And then, the kicker, a message from my mom. Your father's health is suffering. We need your help. Ethan. I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the screen. But then I remembered her words. You're not even supposed to be here. So I deleted the message. She was right. I'm not supposed to be there anymore. And for the first time in my life, I don't want to be. I am at peace. Story 2. We're getting a divorce. Pack your clothes and get out. Everything we acquired during the marriage is registered in your mother's name. You have no rights to anything. Get out. My husband declared, and kicked me out of the house with our 2 children. I left. But my husband couldn't imagine what I would do to him next. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and leave any comments. Your support helps us grow the channel and share even more stories with you. Enjoy listening. When Fyodor and Tasya got married, there was nothing special in their lives. No rich relatives. No devoted partner. Just a small one-room apartment with peeling wallpaper and a creaky sofa that barely fit the 2 of them. But Tasya found all this laughable. She believed everything was still ahead of them. Every morning began the same way. Fedya grumbled that the kettle was making a noise like a plane taking off again. And she, laughing, brought him a mug of instant coffee and a sausage sandwich. The kitchen always smelled of something simple. It might be fried potatoes, or yesterday's soup, or the fresh bread they bought at the kiosk near their house. Well, my general, are you ready for some hard work? Tasya would tease her husband as he put on the shirt she'd ironed the day before. Where else would I go? He would reply with a slight smile. Things wouldn't work out on their own. She loved their morning conversations. Brief, slightly sleepy, but so genuine, and always tried to say something encouraging, as if his whole day depended on her words. Fyodor had started a small business back then. Tiny, but his own. He supplied building materials to small clients, negotiated with them himself, drove them himself, and delivered them himself. Sometimes he'd return late at night, tired but with a sparkle in his eyes. And then he'd sit next to his wife in the kitchen and share his plans. Just another 20 orders. And he'd be ready to expand. I told you everything would work out. She listened, nodding, and believed every word. Tasya also had a job as a secretary in a private company. And at that point, she and Fedya were earning about the same. When their first child was born, Fedya suggested, "Thank you. Listen, maybe you should quit your job I'm managing. My income is growing. And you'll be home with the baby. It's more peaceful this way." Tasya froze. She was sad to quit her job, even though she didn't love it. But it was still her contribution to the family budget. But she looked at her son, then at Fedya, and agreed. Okay. The main thing is that it's not hard for you alone. And from then on, her world centered around her home, her husband, and their child. She quickly got the hang of it, learning to cook soup while holding the baby, and wash diapers at night so everything would be clean by morning. Sometimes, when Fedya was overwhelmed with work, he'd ask her to come to the office to help with the paperwork for orders, and the 2 of them would sort through them late into the night, sitting at the old desk. Tasya was proud of herself then, feeling like she was contributing to the common cause, like she wasn't just a wife, but a true assistant and partner. "You're my gold," Fedya said, kissing her on the top of her head. "Without you, I would have lost everything long ago." Gradually, business picked up. Clients increased. The office moved to a larger space. Fedor hired assistants. And for the first time, they stopped living paycheck to paycheck. The birth of their second child cemented Zatasia's role as the keeper of the home. She no longer interfered with the company's affairs. She had neither the strength nor the time. Breakfast in the morning, then a walk with the children, kindergarten, the clinic, and extracurricular activities. The household chores never ended. But she even enjoyed it. Although she sometimes felt like she was spinning like a squirrel in a wheel, the fatigue was forgotten. It was worth hearing the children's laughter and immersing herself in her husband's arms. Fyodor was coping. He brought home money regularly. The family wanted for nothing. Tasya was grateful for the way things had worked out. She thought things couldn't get any better. Sometimes, though, she caught herself thinking she'd completely lost track of how her husband lived at work. If he'd told her everything in detail before, now he shared only the general outline. "Everything's fine. Don't worry. I'll figure it out. Tasha didn't insist. If it's fine, then it really is fine. Why burden each other? She has children. He has work. But otherwise, everything seemed rosy. So rosy that Tasya couldn't even imagine that one day this smooth, well-oiled life could go downhill. But, as often happens, it's precisely at those moments when a person thinks everything is perfect that fate is already preparing a new twist. It was an ordinary morning. Tasya made porridge for the children, woke them up, and sat them down at the table. Fyodor, in his usual hurry, poured himself some coffee, picked up his phone, and paced the kitchen, typing something. She didn't pay any attention to it. Well, work. He's always on the phone with clients, suppliers, and employees. When the kids ran into the room and Tasya started clearing the table, he looked at her and let out a loud sigh. Tasya, we need to talk. Her heart sank. Usually, such words didn't bode well. What happened? She asked cautiously, brushing crumbs off the table. Fedya answered evenly, even coldly, as if he'd been preparing for it in advance. Tasya, I've decided we're getting a divorce. Tasya's spoon fell from her hands. What? She asked, hoping she'd misheard. We're getting a divorce, he repeated firmly. You and I are different people. You understand, I need a different status. As a different level. Something inside Tasya seemed to snap. She sat down on the chair because her legs wouldn't support her. Fedya, are you crazy? What's your status? We have a family. 2 kids. But he just shrugged. I'm a different person now. Tasya. You're... well, you know. Simple. Without ambitions. And I have a business. Connections. And I fell in love with another woman. She's younger. More beautiful. More promising. We'll look good together. Tasya clutched the edge of the table with her hands to keep from crying. And what do you want now? She asked hoarsely. I want you to pack your things and leave. You can take the children. But this house will stay with me. Then she seemed to come to her senses. The blood rushed to her cheeks, and her voice became firmer. No. Fedya. This won't happen. I'm not going anywhere. Everything we have was acquired during our marriage. So we'll split it equally. He laughed loudly. It was an unpleasant, almost mocking laugh. Tasya. You're so naive. She remained silent, not understanding. All the property, he continued calmly, even proudly. It's registered to my mother. The business, too. The only one registered to me is that one-room apartment on the outskirts where we used to live. I can give it to you. I won't be sorry. But you have no rights to this house. So pack your things and leave on good terms. Tasya felt the ground fall from under her feet. All this time, all these years, she believed they were building a future together. She poured her heart, her energy, her time, and now it turns out she has nothing. Everything she worked so hard for belongs to her mother-in-law. So you planned it all in advance, she whispered. Of course, he replied calmly. That's how it's done in business. You have to be on the safe side. At that moment, Tasya realized the man she loved and trusted was no longer her husband. A stranger, a calculating man, sat before her. How can this be? She thought. I trusted him completely. I gave myself entirely to my family. And that's what she got. That same day, having packed a minimum of things and taking the children, she went to the place she least wanted to go, to her mother-in-law's. She and Kira Ivanovna had never had much warmth. Always stern. Always dissatisfied. She never considered Tasya worthy of her son. And so this time, Kira Ivanovna greeted them with a cold shoulder. At the threshold, she didn't even move to help with the bags, merely stepping aside to let them pass. Well, come in, she said, as if fulfilling an unpleasant duty. What do you want? Her gaze was icy. The children immediately darted into the room. and Tasya remained in the hallway, holding the bag. "We have nowhere to go," she said quietly. "Fyodor kicked us out and said everything was registered in your name." His mother-in-law narrowed her eyes. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "What did you expect?" she muttered through clenched teeth. "You cheated on your husband. Had children. And that's how you protected yourself." What? Tasya was taken aback. "What cheating? How could you even say that?" His mother-in-law snorted and lifted her chin. "My son told me everything. I believe him. But not you." Tasya turned pale. "So that's it. So all this time her mother-in-law had been treating her like a liar. Do you want proof?" Her voice rang with resentment. "Let's do a DNA test, so you can be sure." "We'll do it." Kira Ivanovna nodded coldly. "And then you won't even get child support." The tests were done quickly. And when the results came back, there was no doubt. Both children are Fyodor's. Kira Ivanovna held the paper in her hands. Her expression, stony. "Well," Tasya couldn't take it anymore. "So there you have it. I didn't cheat. I lived for my family. For him," she snapped. "And," as if a dam had burst, she began speaking hurriedly and haltingly, "I didn't sleep at night. Raising the children. Cooking. Washing. Cleaning. Ironing. And then I went to your son's office to help him. I worked as hard as he did. We built everything together. Everything." She clenched her fists. "And now I'm left holding the bag because he suddenly decided I wasn't up to par." Kira Ivanovna listened without interrupting, only occasionally wincing, as if in pain. That evening, she called her son and demanded an explanation. At first, Fedya brushed her off. "Mom, why are you getting involved in this? I'm a grown woman." So he decided. So that's it. But Kira Ivanovna didn't back down. And finally, he confessed, "I always knew that as soon as I got back on my feet and achieved success, I'd change my wife for a more worthy one. You yourself should understand that a successful man needs a wife to match. Tasya is not a cut from the same cloth." He spoke easily, almost with pride. And this struck Kira Ivanovna most of all. She suddenly realized that all these years he had been lying to her, turning her against his wife, telling her nasty things to keep them from getting closer, while he himself had proven himself shallow, petty, and insignificant. But she didn't say it out loud. She sat silently, listening to her son confidently discuss his new life, his status, and his prospects. Very soon, Kira Ivanovna did something no one expected of her. She sold off her property. Everything, her business, her real estate, even her car, and she divided the money in half. She kept some for herself and gave the rest to Tasya. "This is yours," she said, handing over an envelope with documents for a bank deposit. Everything was fair. "Why did you do this?" Tasya whispered, not believing her eyes. "Because I'm not going to live the way I did before." Kira Ivanovna replied, "As he did. So it was with him. I think we both deserve compensation. I lived my whole life for him. I thought I raised a decent man. But he lied to me, dictated his rules, and didn't even let me become a normal grandmother. He convinced me that the children weren't his. I can imagine what it was like for you to cope with the children without help. Forgive me. I'm sure you'll continue to cope. And I'll start my life from scratch." Indeed. Soon, my mother-in-law moved to another city. She had a man there for a long time, with whom she corresponded and met secretly. But she couldn't bring herself to tie the knot with him. Her son was against it. And now his opinion didn't matter to her. Tasya, having received the money, also moved. She wanted a fresh start, far away from the pain and deception. There, in the new city, she bought a cozy apartment and enrolled the children in school and kindergarten. Gradually, life returned to normal. Fyodor, however, remained in the same one-room apartment registered in his name. It was old, cramped, with a peeling kitchen and a rusty bathroom. That was all he had left. And now he had to pay child support. His young companion quickly lost interest in him. Realizing he had nothing left, she packed her things and disappeared as quickly as she had appeared. And then he began trying to get Tasia back. Calling. Writing. Begging Tasia. Let's try again. The kids need a father. No. Fedia. You've made your choice. Live with him. She said calmly and hung up. Life had put everything in its place. Tasia, having endured betrayal and pain, had found strength and self-confidence. Kira Ivanovna had also found happiness. And Fedor was left alone. His dream of status shattered and empty-handed. Story 3. After inheriting the apartment, my husband said, "I'll sell it. You give me your savings. We'll buy a dacha and a car." I reluctantly agreed. He'd disappear there for days. I thought he'd started cheating, using change as a cover. But it turned out to be much worse. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and leave any comments. Your support helps us grow the channel and share even more stories with you. Enjoy listening. Lesia came home as soon as she could. She had to ask for time off from practice. But when she heard her grandmother, Vera Lvovna, speak, she knew she had to go immediately. Vera Lvovna opened the door. She looked worried. "How's Mom? Come and see for yourself." Lesia entered the room. Her mother, Uliana Nikolaevna, was lying on the bed. Her hair was disheveled. Her face swollen from crying. She was in her nightgown. But it was clear she hadn't slept. The woman buried her face in the pillow and didn't even notice Lesia had entered. "Mom, stop crying." Lesia rushed to her. "I came as soon as I could. I can't. My life is over. I'll give it all up. I regret nothing." Uliana sobbed so hard, her voice broke. Lesia and her grandmother exchanged glances and, without a word, we decided they needed to take matters into their own hands. Uliana Nikolaevna worked as a nurse at the city hospital. She was a gentle, kind woman, always attentive to her patients. She performed injections, dressings, and IVs quickly and painlessly. For this, her patients loved her and her colleagues respected her. She lived with her daughter. Her divorce from her husband was a thing of the past. Her daughter grew up dreaming of becoming a doctor, to help people like her mother. By the age of 15, Lesia had made her decision and was diligently preparing for her exams with the support of her mother and grandmother. And their life seemed calm and measured, until one day, a pensioner was admitted to the hospital where Uliana Nikolaevna worked. A man named Roman often came to see her. He was visiting his mother and immediately noticed the nurse with the light touch his mother had mentioned. At first, Roman thanked her for her work, then began visiting her as if he were visiting her, not his mother. By the time she was discharged, Roman had even taken on a playful tone. "Ulianochka, my dear, you're so wonderful. You're a truly divine nurse. Your hands are like angel wings. Roman, you flatter me." Uliana Nikolaevna blushed, unaccustomed to such overt attention from men. However, the motives for the affair soon became more obvious. "You would be like coming home to my mother. She hates hospitals terribly." And they prescribed her injections for another month. He begged, persistently persuaded. And in the end, Uliana agreed. The mother and son lived in a small 2-room apartment on the outskirts of town. Getting there was difficult. The bus only took them to the end of the line. Then it was another 10-minute walk. But since Uliana had promised, they had to take the bus. The nurse carried out the doctor's orders and was very helpful. Roman paid her generously with compliments for this. And in the end, he was even ready to offer her his hand in marriage, instead of money. "You see, Uliana, I have no work at all right now. And my mother is disabled. Everything goes on medication. Here, take everything you have. I can't give you more." He held out the envelope, but Uliana just shook her head. "Let's call it volunteering," she said, and was about to leave. Roman stopped her at the door. You are such a wonderful woman. Maybe we can meet again. Do you need another course of injections? No. I need you. He spoke fluently. He was younger than Juliana. Quite attractive. An interest shone in his eyes. For a woman who had gone through a painful divorce and lived without her husband for many years. These words were unexpected and pleasant. Like balm for the soul. Besides, she loved feeling needed. And Roman's mother always looked at her so warmly and said she was praying for her health. Their relationship developed slowly. Juliana was cautious. And Roman seemed to be waiting. Adjusting. That evening, Juliana invited him to her birthday party. They weren't planning many guests, a friend, Lesia, and her grandmother. The daughter greeted her mother's man warily, but said nothing. Vera Lvovna also didn't intervene. Although the distrust in her eyes was noticeable. When the guests left, Juliana confided to her mom, I think I'm happy. He's such a good man. And his mother is simply perfect. It's a shame she's sick and doesn't go out much. Would you get along with her? So, are they looking for a nurse or a wife for Roma? Lesia asked with a sarcastic smile. Roma's mom takes care of herself. And as for courage, well, I've already been there. Uliana said sheepishly. Lesia wanted to object. But she had her own concerns at the time. She was preparing to enter medical school. There was no time to seriously discuss her mother's relationship. Meanwhile, Roman was spending more and more time with Juliana. He'd drop by after work, help her carry her bags from the store. One day, he came over and saw she was upset. Are you crying? What happened? My daughter's getting into college. She wants to go study in another city. That's so good. Roman rubbed his hands together gleefully. Good. Yes. But I'll miss you. I don't have anyone except them and my mom. You have me. My dear. And I won't let you get bored. He said confidently. When Lesia enrolled and left, the apartment became empty. That's when Roman moved in with Yuliana Nikolaevna permanently. His apartment on the outskirts was small, and Yuliana felt uncomfortable moving into someone else's apartment, especially sharing it with another landlady. Roman didn't insist. His mother could take care of herself. True. She had to take her groceries, do her treatments, and clean the apartment. But Yuliana Nikolaevna didn't think about that. The main thing was that she and Roman had moved in together, and to avoid any unwanted glances, they married a year later. Roman quickly settled into the apartment, visiting his mother less and less. I'll be working until late. So why don't you go see my mother, he told Juliana. And she agreed. She couldn't abandon the elderly man. Her mother-in-law hadn't lived long. She was a modest and quiet woman, and she passed away, just as quietly in her sleep. Yuliana Nikolaevna mourned the loss sincerely. Roman's mother treated her with warmth. Roman seemed dejected, too. But soon a new idea entered his head. We need to trade Mom's apartment for a country house. Why? We'll plant flowers and breathe fresh air. He said. Maybe it would be better to rent it out, no. Yulia. I've already decided everything. I'll buy a country house and buy a car with the rest. Is that enough? Yuliana Nikolaevna raised an eyebrow. So this is already jointly acquired. If it was acquired jointly, then we should invest it equally. I know you've got some money saved up. It's for your daughter's wedding. Yuliana said doubtfully. You'll earn some more. I'll drive a taxi when I buy a car. Anyway, we'll save up. Yuliana Nikolaevna thought about it and withdrew her savings. She needed the car for driving to the dacha. And Roman spoke confidently, as if he knew everything. Uliana Nikolaevna trusted him. When Lesia learned that her mother had given her the money she'd been saving for her wedding, she was deeply offended. But she couldn't stay angry with her mother for long. She knew arguing was pointless. Her mother had already invested, and the money would never be returned. After buying the dacha, the novel disappeared there more and more often. He needed to plant, weed, and paint. He had a lot to do. Oh well, my weekends are booked with trips. So I can't. Uliana Nikolaevna replied. The promised part-time job driving a taxi had somehow faded away. But a new idea had emerged. Growing zucchini for sale. Everyone loves zucchini. The man assured her. They'll sell like hotcakes at the market. Juliana shrugged. Things were going well for her. She got a job at a private medical facility, made house calls, and earned enough money that his fantasies didn't particularly bother her. They lived like that until one of her former colleagues told Yuliana Nikolaevna an interesting fact. A nurse friend of mine told me a guy was pursuing her. The colleague said, squinting. He looks a lot like your novel. Nonsense. It can't be. She sent me this photo. He came to get her teeth fixed and told her she had a light touch. And he really needed her to give his mother some injections. Mother. Then it definitely wasn't him. Roma's mother died. Uliana Nikolaevna shuddered. I think you need to keep an eye on your affair. He's cheating on her. Keep in mind, all these injections were just pretexts to lure young nurses. Juliana didn't believe her friend at the time. She thought she was simply jealous. Since she hadn't been hired by the same organization where Yuliana Nikolaevna worked, the woman assumed it was all a lie. But Roman was soon caught. One day, Yuliana Nikolaevna saw her car on her way home from work. The woman looked closer and noticed Roman was riding with a blonde. She herself was swaying on the bus at the time, pressed against the window by the rush-hour crowd. Thinking her husband was planting zucchini at the dacha, Roman didn't deny it. You're not exactly fresh anymore. And I love young nurses, he said without shame. Uliana sat down. What my colleague said turned out to be true. So, since you know about Masha and me, pack your things and go. Roma continued. Where to my apartment? Uliana Nikolaevna turned pale. We're married. We'll split everything equally. But I sold my apartment. So I have nowhere to live. And you and Mom can live at the dacha. Okay. I'll give you the dacha. And you can free up my apartment. How can this be? Olesia, she'll get married and live with her husband. And Nikolai's not my yard. And maybe I want another child. You definitely won't give birth to me. And Masha is only too happy. She's still young. Roman said a lot of things to Juliana that evening. And she was so upset that she couldn't stop crying, trying to persuade Roman to change his mind. So, anyway, I don't want to cry and I'll go to the dacha. And you calm down and get everything ready for the move, he said as a parting shot and left. Lesia suspected something was wrong when her mother didn't call. Usually they talked on the phone every day. But now, her mother wasn't calling or picking up. Lesia asked her grandmother to go and check on her mother. Vera Lvovna arrived the next morning to find her daughter in tears, pale and haggard. Juliana even took a day off from work due to her health. Lesia arrived that evening. Together with her grandmother, they tried to bring her back to her senses. Mom, get up. This scoundrel isn't worth a single tear from you. Lesia pleaded. I can't. My life is over. Uliana Nikolaevna wailed. He told me to move out. I'll be left alone in my old age and homeless. No one will give him anything. Vera Lvovna said. No. Mom. Let them take everything. I don't need anything. Juliana was in despair and sobbed even harder. Lesia talked to her grandmother. And they decided, we need to put Roman in his place. Lesia went to the dacha with her boyfriend. Yegor. Roman greeted them harshly, refusing to let them into the house. Mind your own business. Ed dismissed. Mother and I will sort this out ourselves. She already promised me she'd move out in a week. And it's not your place to tell her what to do. You have a week. Roman. To pack your things and move out of Uliana Nikolaevna's and this dacha, Yegor said crisply, straightening his shoulders. Why is that Roman lounged on the sofa, making it clear to everyone that he didn't care what his stepdaughter's boyfriend had said? Because the property they had jointly acquired would be sold. The dacha was purchased during the marriage. The car, too. All of this would be sold and divided equally. Lesia's boyfriend explained clearly. And what if you show up at Yuliana Nikolaevna's again and get on her nerves? What exactly did Yegor say next? Lesia couldn't hear anymore. She felt stuffy in the room and hurried outside. But from then on, Roman was afraid to even approach his now ex-wife's apartment. Roman really had to put the dacha and car up for sale. No matter how much Yuliana Nikolaevna claimed she didn't need anything, her daughter and Vera Lvovna talked her out of it. And she got back the money she'd been withdrawing from the account for her daughter. Now her money was back with interest. However, the young couple thought about it and decided it would be better to pool their savings and take out a mortgage. Roman disappeared from their lives. Rumors surfaced occasionally someone saw him with a nurse they knew. Someone said he was renting an apartment. But Yuliana tried not to listen. The first months were difficult. She often cried in the evenings and couldn't sleep for a long time. It seemed like all her years had been wasted. She tried to work more. But she came home broken. Gradually, things got better. Her mother and her daughter's support were a great help. But the real reboot came later. After the birth of her granddaughter, Yuliana Nikolaevna finally realized that the meaning of her life was right there. Tiny as it was, but definitely worth living for. Story 4. My name is Nadia. I am 27, and after an 18-hour shift at the hospital, I came home, and the key did not fit the lock. My stepmother stood at the threshold and said, $40. Ling ling ling. And we will let you in. Kira, you need to go on vacation. I nodded clearly and left. And in the morning, she found an envelope by the door and screamed so loudly that the neighbors jumped out of their houses. There is a special kind of fatigue that is not caused by lack of sleep. It nests in the bones, pulsates, fills the emptiness in the chest, where joy used to live. It was with this kind of fatigue that I returned home. 18 hours on duty is not just filling out paperwork and taking temperatures. I broke my rib doing CPR on a boy, while his parents were rushing around the emergency room. 3 times during my shift, I registered death. I pulled 2 people back from the other side. There was dried blood on the sleeves of my scrubs. And my skin was completely saturated with hand sanitizer. Everything I wanted was missing. Everything I needed. This shower. Normal food. And at least 4 hours of sleep before the morning shift. That was my entire wish list. So when I drove up to the house in Riverside and the key wouldn't turn in the lock, my brain refused to accept it at first. I twisted it this way and that. Shook it. Stared at it. Maybe something would change. The door swung open. Stepmother Larissa was standing on the threshold, wearing yoga pants and a t-shirt with wine stains. In one hand was her iPhone. In the other, an angry expression. "Oh," she drawled, as if she had forgotten about my existence. "Look who's here." Behind her, on the couch, sprawled my stepsister Kira, wearing my hoodie. She scrolled through TikTok videos as if the house were her personal property. Her boyfriend Tyler, who hasn't lifted a finger since we moved in, was finishing off my Cheetos. "The key doesn't fit," I said. "Right. We changed the locks. The rent went up. Do you want to live here $40? 0, 0, 0, for all the years of living here for utilities. Kira needs a vacation. And you're not a poor doctor now," she said in the tone of a benefactor. I stood with my bag in my hands. My sneakers stuck to the doormat. I was silent, looking at her. Carefully looking at the woman my father had married when I was still learning to braid my hair. The one who told me to call her simply Larissa. Stepmother sounds too formal. But she never treated me like family. "Does Dad know?" I asked. She smirked. "Your dad's deployed overseas. He's gone for now. I'm in charge of the house. I make the rules here." I looked over her shoulder into the living room. My old textbooks were lying where I'd left them. My name was on the utility bills. I paid for them last month. "Got it." I nodded. She turned around and walked to the car. Without a scandal. Without slamming the door. She simply left. That night her chest ached more than after any shift. She slept in the staff break room on a hard couch, wrapped in a scratchy blanket that smelled of disinfectant, in fits and starts. Superficially, they were celebrating at that time. Probably clinking glasses. Discussing a brilliant plan. Maybe Kira even posted a story on Instagram with some sarcastic caption about freeloaders. They just didn't know one thing. I had been waiting for this moment for years. In the morning, while they were sleeping off their hangovers, I came back, knocked once, and put the envelope right in the middle of the doormat. So she would definitely see it. Then she drove to the fence and began to wait. In 15 minutes, she was like clockwork. Always at 9:02, she checks the front porch. The door creaked open. Larissa, in fuzzy slippers with a coffee mug. Best mom in peeling glitter. She bent down, picked up the envelope, opened it, and screamed. She didn't gasp. Didn't scream. She howled, as if someone had died. The lights came on in the house across the street. The neighbor's dog barked loudly. The curtains twitched. The neighbors came out to their front yards. I sat in the car and watched her face twist. Rage. Panic. Incomprehension. As if she had just been told the world was ending. "Kira," she screamed. My stepsister crawled out, squinting from the sun. Looked at the paper and screamed too. I didn't move. Didn't smile. Just waited. This was only the beginning. This house used to be my refuge. As a child, I would run here after soccer practice. After school with scraped knees and hurt feelings. There was always orange juice in the fridge. My father smelled of hospital soap and disinfectant. He would come home late, but still sit next to me while I did my homework. And doze with a medical journal on his lap. Mom made the house warm. Literally and figuratively. She loved throw blankets. Vanilla candles. Long hugs. Then she died. I was 12. A car accident on I-95. In the morning, she was choosing decorations for my birthday at Target. By evening, she was gone. My father did not cry at the funeral. He held on for me. But I remember how tightly he squeezed my shoulder on the pew, as if he was afraid if I let go, we will both fall. For a while, it was just the two of us. Two people in one lifeboat trying not to rock. Then Larissa appeared. I was 15 when they got married. She had a daughter. Kira. My age. But we are like from different planets. Kira is one of those who calls adults by their first names and thinks that makes her more mature. She played music loud in the kitchen. Rolled her eyes at everything. I've got a new iPhone on her credit card every 6 months. According to her, I was quiet, studious and weird. That same year, my father was deployed overseas. Army medic. Department of Defense assignment. Middle East. He said temporarily. He said he would return. I wouldn't have time to miss him. Larissa promised to look after me. She didn't watch. She took over the territory. Everything changed overnight. The throw blankets disappeared. The vanilla candles were replaced by sterile eucalyptus ones. Mom's photo disappeared from the hallway. No one discussed it. I remember asking once, "Can I have it in my room?" Larissa looked at me as if I had suggested hanging roadkill on the wall. "Isn't it time for us all to move on?" she said. Translation: Isn't it time for me to finally erase your mother from memory? I kept my head down. Studied. I got into medical school early on a full scholarship. Tried not to show up at home. Internships. Part-time jobs. Summer rotations. I returned only for holidays or between apartments, and even then, I paid my share. More than I should have. I bought groceries. Chipped in for utilities. Fixed the garbage disposal when Larissa said she didn't want to deal with repair guys. Thank you. I never heard. Kira dragged Tyler along when we were 19. Older than us. Covered in tattoos. Unemployed. But according to Larissa, no one understood him. He practically moved in with us. Ate our food. Screamed into his gaming headset at night. He's family. Larissa said. Funny. I'd never been called that. By the time I graduated from residency, I had lost hope for justice. But I still paid and helped. I didn't want drama. Conflicts. I wanted peace. I thought if I stayed quiet and generous, maybe they'd leave me alone. They didn't. As soon as I started getting a decent salary, like flipping a switch, all conversations at the table turned to money. Larissa kept dropping passive-aggressive hints about how expensive it was to raise girls. How long I had lived here for free. Then the hints became direct demands: could I chip in more? Even though I was already paying more than everyone else, Kira. You see. Never had a proper vacation. She deserved to travel. And then, when I was heating up the groceries I had bought in the microwave, Larissa straight up demanded that I compensate for all the years I had lived under her roof. Kira nodded from the couch. It's fair. You're a doctor now. Not broke. I was silent, looking at the slowly rotating leftover pasta and thinking, what's it like to be robbed in your own kitchen? A few days later, the locks were changed. And then I gave them the letter. There was no anger in it, only cold calculation. A business-like formal demand letter requiring that the living space be vacated within 30 days. Attached to it was a copy of the deed with my name listed as the owner. What they didn't know and never cared about was that the house had been put in my name when I turned 21. My father had bought it before his marriage to Larissa. Premarital property. And he had quietly transferred it to me through a lawyer, without saying a word to her. Just in case. He explained then. I want you to be protected. No matter what happens. I never flaunted it. Never used it as leverage. I continued to pay my bills. Behaved decently. Hoping that one day they would start treating me like family. Instead, they changed the locks and demanded $40. Ling ling ling. So I gave them 30 days to get ready. They took it badly. As soon as Larissa saw the papers, her scream echoed throughout the neighborhood. Kira jumped out, snatched the documents, and also screamed something unintelligible. It wasn't heard from the car, but her face showed pure panic. They didn't believe it. Later, a voicemail from Larissa. We will get a lawyer. The documents are fake. You think you're the smartest, you're wrong. Then the text messages started pouring in. How could you do this to us? This is betrayal of family. After everything we've done for you, your father will find out. We'll tell him. I didn't answer. What's the point? The house never belonged to them. They just didn't think the day would come when I'd stop pretending. I spent the night at Jake's. A friend from residency. The type of guy who always has protein powder in his blender and asks minimal questions. I told him briefly. Family problems. Temporary. He offered a spare room. Gave me a blanket. Cool. Just don't touch my workout gear. The calls didn't stop. Larissa. Kira. Even Tyler took turns spinning the guilt carousel. Are you really going to throw your family out on the street? We took care of you when there was no one else. After everything we gave you. Funny. I strained my memory and could not recall a single instance when Larissa gave anything without conditions. Side eyes or snide comments. Except that she generously gave away her anxiety. I ignored calls. Messages piled up unread. I thought they would go crazy for a couple of days and then calm down. No way. Larissa changed her tactics and went online. In 2 days. And a Facebook post. It's sad when the one you raised turns their back on you. Some forget who fed them all these years. Settle. Kira joined in. Made a TikTok. A story from life. My stepsister is evicting me because we asked her to pay rent at least once. Crying emoji for effect. Trending audio on top. Messages poured in from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Larissa seems upset. She says you're being aggressive. I sent the screenshots to my lawyer and didn't answer them. Instead, I sent my attorney a folder copy of the deed. Property records. Demand letter. Screenshots of Larissa's posts and Kira's videos. Then I created a new folder labeled evidence and began saving everything. They spiraled down. And I documented. A few days after the letter, Larissa called again. This time I answered, "So you're really doing this?" Her voice was shaking. "Hello to you too." "Yes. I am. You will regret it. This house is a gift to the family. It's a gift to me. Literally. Look at the documents." She muttered something about moral rights. Betrayal. She said she would talk to my father. "Let's do it," I said. "He'll be home soon. I can't wait." And I hung up. In truth, I had already talked to him. My father called the day after I sent the demand letter. His voice was tired. Not confused. Not angry. Just quiet. I assumed it would come to this. He said, "Did you know I didn't know they would lock you out?" But I knew they had gone too far. I heard some things. It turned out he had heard about them through mutual friends. Neighbors. People had seen the posts and were writing with concern. At first I didn't want to believe it. But the more I heard, the clearer it became. They weren't just ungrateful. They were actively trying to push you out. And he made it clear he was on my side. Nothing more on the phone. He said, "I've seen the documents. I will sort it out." I believed him. But Larissa didn't. She thought she could get out of it. A week before the deadline. A new message. "We will not move out. It's illegal. I am the wife. Half of the house is mine by marriage." Then I sent another official letter through my lawyer. Certified mail. Clarification about gifts. The house is my father's premarital property. Bought before marriage. And he had every right to gift it to me. The documents are clean. Deed transfer. Impecable. No loopholes. No mistakes. Just facts. I expected silence. Instead, they doubled down. Kira made a new video. Now she was crying into the camera, telling how her evil stepsister was throwing them out into the street. Larissa posted another dramatic status. Some forget where they came from. We raised her. And she's throwing us out on the street. Screenshot saved in the evidence folder. That same day, a neighbor called. A sweet old lady who used to give us cookies when we were kids. With worry in her voice, "They're telling everyone that you forged documents. Nothing to worry about. I'm not fighting for social media victory. I'm getting my house back." And then the cherry on top. 3 days before the deadline, I walk up to the car after a long shift, and there's a piece of paper on the windshield. Printed crooked, "If you do this, we'll make sure everyone knows what you're really like. Don't test us." No signature. Only cowardice and desperation. I smiled, took a photo, and added it to the folder. That's the thing about threats. When you have already lost your composure, calm and decency, there's nothing left to threaten with. Let them talk. Let them post. Let them yell. I had documents. I had the law. And most importantly, I had had enough. Thursday. Eviction day. I didn't sleep all night. Not from nerves, but from readiness. That readiness when your chest is tight and thoughts are focused on one point. I printed out the documents. The lawyer is on speed dial, and my patience is buried under 6 years of silence. They hadn't packed. Of course not. The curtains are drawn. Tyler's beat-up Honda is still parked by the fence. There's a Domino's box on the porch. As if that would intimidate me. I arrived exactly at 1000 a.m. Not in scrubs. Not off-duty. I took the day off. Put on a crisp blouse. Even did my hair. If they see me as a villain, at least a composed one. I knocked once. Larissa opened the door without makeup. Hands on hips. Not surprised to see me. Just a smirk. We're not moving out. This is the last time I ask nicely. You think you'll break into your father's house by force? I showed a copy of the property deed. This is not his house. It's mine. You have 30 minutes. She laughed. She just couldn't help it. You really think you can kick your relatives out? You already kicked yourselves out. The court order and sheriff's notice have been in your hands for several weeks. You ignored all the deadlines. Kira crawled to the door. Eyes swollen. Either she hadn't slept, or was having her third morning breakdown. This is illegal. You're throwing us out on the street. No. You chose not to leave. I gave you every chance. I looked back. We called my father. He's already on his way. Great. I hope he gets here before the sheriff does. And as if on cue, the Uber pulled up to the curb. My father got out. Tanned. Moving slower than I remember. But the military bearing is still there. Even in a cardigan. He walked up the path and looked at me first. Not at Larissa. Not at Kira. At me. Can we talk? Step aside, so they can't hear. I've read everything, he said. Every document. Every message you forwarded. I'm sorry it came to this. I should have come back earlier. Basically, everything is settled. He nodded and handed over an envelope. What is this, divorce papers? Filed through the consulate. Here's the notarized confirmation. I looked at the envelope. Then at him. She never cared about family. He continued. Only control. Appearances. The desire to squeeze everything out of you. I realized it too late. But now I see. I was silent. No words were needed. Then he added. Almost embarrassed. I met someone overseas. She's kind. Gentle. Reminds me of your mother. With her, I feel like myself again. He blinked. I'm not replacing her. He quickly added. But I think I deserve happiness too. You do. We returned to the house. Larissa and Kira were on the porch. Like hawks, defending their last stand. Father approached first. Let's talk frankly. I know everything. Everything. The lies. Posts. Threats. How you treated my daughter. There's nothing more to say. Kira opened her mouth, probably to blurt out something dramatic. But he interrupted her. This isn't your home. It never was. Pack your things. Now. Larissa grabbed his arm. You're throwing us out after all these years, he pulled away gently. You threw yourselves out. Kira turned to me desperately. You can't. I can. And I am. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't flinch. I just stood there while the two people who had mocked my exhaustion and called me weak suddenly realized I'm not tired anymore. I've had enough. They tried to stall for time. Protesting takes more time. It's not fair. You've ruined everything. But eventually they packed. Larissa went first. Stuffing things into garbage bags. Muttering about lawyers and revenge. Kira rushed around the house for hours. Slamming cabinets. Sobbing into her phone that no one answered. By sunset, the house was quiet. By midnight, it was mine again. I walked barefoot from room to room. The lights were on everywhere. Not because I needed to see anything, but because I could. For the first time in years, this space didn't feel like a trap. It was my home. No tension in the walls. No fake smiles at the dinner table. No guilt for existing. Just silence. Just peace. I brewed coffee at 2 a.m. Because no one would complain about the noise. I stood on the porch, wrapping a throw blanket around myself. Looking out at the street that Larissa considered her kingdom. It seemed smaller now. Less threatening. Like I had finally outgrown it. And when I turned around, I didn't see the ghosts of old fights or buried rage. I saw possibilities: clean floors, empty walls, and freedom. My home. My rules. My peace. 6 months passed. Kira moved in with Tyler's parents. She didn't last long. I heard they kicked them both out after a couple of weeks. Something about bills, attitude, and nighttime screaming into gaming headsets. Larissa tried to sue. Lost. Then she tried to play on my father's sympathy. Also in vain. Now he lives overseas permanently. Happier. Healthier with someone who respects him. Last month, he said, I haven't felt so calm in decades. And I still work long hours. But now when I come home, the key fits. My refrigerator. My silence. No one begs for money. No one slams doors. No one pretends that I owe for the right to exist. Sometimes I catch myself waiting for the next demand. As if it's all still programmed. But it doesn't come. They're gone. And I'm free. But honestly, did I go too far? Would you do the same story? 5. My name is Angela. I am 30 years old. And my wedding day almost turned into a disaster when my father chose my sister over me. Having agreed to walk me down the aisle, He backed out at the last minute because Regina, my older sister, had a surprise party that same day. My sister, who had always envied me, seemed to have won again. But that was only the beginning of the story. What my father never expected was, who would take his place at the altar? And his reaction when he found out about it still gives me the creeps. I grew up in an affluent neighborhood of Boston, and from the outside our family seemed simply perfect. Our modest but cozy house with a well-kept garden was the envy of the neighbors. My mother planted tulips every spring, and my father taught me to ski on weekends, or we went hiking together in the White Mountains. I still hold on to these memories. In my early childhood, my father, Igor, was a real hero to me. Tall, is fit, with premature gray hair at 30. He had a commanding appearance, but at the same time, the kindest smile. He worked as a financial consultant at Bank of America, and his formal suits, it seemed to me, made him look like a movie star. Every morning, before leaving for work, he would find time to have breakfast with me, asking about my plans for the day while my mother packed my lunch for school. "Angela, you have the brightest mind I have ever seen," he would say, and the corners of his eyes would wrinkle. "You will change the world one day." Those words meant everything to me. I enthusiastically took on any school project, knowing that my dad would help me make the best presentation for a history lesson or a literature report. When I brought home a report card with straight A's, he would hang it on the refrigerator and take me to Ben & Jerry's to celebrate. My mother, Lydia, was the peacemaker in our family. With her warm brown eyes and angelic patience, she balanced out my father's sometimes excessive strictness. She worked as a registered nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital and always put our needs above her own. I remember how she would sit with me for hours, helping me with my homework or teaching me to bake her famous apple pie, which was the delight of our entire neighborhood. The dynamics in our family changed dramatically when I turned 13. Mom started feeling tired all the time, and after 3 months, we received a terrible diagnosis: pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The next 6 months were like a fog. Hospitals, adults whispering, and my bright, full of life, mom fading before my eyes. Her death left a gaping hole in our family that we were never able to fill. My sister Regina is 3 years older than me, and our relationship was complicated from the start. Even before my mother died, Regina seemed jealous of my close relationship with my father, tall and athletic, while I was a petite, bookish girl. Regina excelled in sports, and I was drawn to art and literature. Mom always tried to equally celebrate our different talents, but Regina took every compliment to me as a personal insult. After Mom died, the tension between us only increased. Dad threw himself into work, often staying in the office until 9 or 10 p.m. I think he was trying to escape the oppressive emptiness of our home. His absence created a vacuum that Regina, Charlou, quickly filled by appointing herself the new mistress of the house. "Dad has it tough enough without your whims." She scolded me when I asked if he would be home for dinner. "He has important clients. We have to be strong for him." I watched Regina morph into someone I barely recognized. She began cooking, even though her food was nowhere near my mother's, and took over all household decisions. My father seemed grateful for this, and their relationship grew stronger, while my connection with him began to crumble. The business success that followed my mother's death only made matters worse. Father had been promoted to senior partner, which meant more money but even less time. Regina had masterfully manipulated the situation, using guilt and emotional blackmail to maintain her position as his favorite. Angela just spent $5.50 on paint, she would inform him, conveniently leaving out that it was for a school project he'd forgotten about. Or Angela said you didn't need to come to her concert at the music school because she knew how busy you were. When in reality, I was counting the days, hoping he would come. By the time I was in high school, Regina had created a completely false image of me for my father. According to her, I was disobedient, ungrateful, and only interested in my friends. In reality, I had retreated into my studies and art to cope with the loss of not only my mother, but increasingly, my father. The worst betrayal happened in 10th grade. When I was nominated for a prestigious art scholarship, the award ceremony was scheduled for Thursday evening, and I reminded my father about it for several weeks. The day before, I overheard Regina's phone conversation with him. Angela told me that she didn't want to make a fuss about tomorrow's event. She said, "She even mentioned that your presence might embarrass her. Maybe you could just send a card." The next day, I sat alone at the ceremony, watching the other students with their proud parents, and accepted my award alone. My dad sent a congratulatory text, mentioning that he had an important dinner with a client. I later learned from his secretary that Regina had called his office and said I had asked to reschedule the ceremony, which is why he had scheduled another appointment. When I tried to talk to her, Regina just shrugged. "You always want to be the center of attention. It's pathetic." By the time I was 18, I couldn't wait to go to college. I applied to universities across the country, seeking to distance myself from the toxic atmosphere at home. Northwestern University offered me a partial scholarship, and I dove headfirst into student life, limiting trips home to major holidays, during which I had to endure Regina's subtle jabs and my father's distant politeness. In my sophomore year, I met Kyle. We were taking the same lecture course on American literature, and he asked me for notes after missing class due to the flu. Tall, with kind eyes and a quick smile, Kyle was an engineering student, and his logical mind balanced my more creative thinking. Our meeting in a Starbucks to share notes turned into a 3-hour conversation, and within a month we were inseparable. Kyle's family was loud and very close-knit, and they immediately accepted me as one of their own. His mother, Linda, an elementary school teacher, had an amazing talent for making everyone feel special and needed. His father, Sam, a civil engineer with a subtle sense of humor, and his younger brother, Matt. I welcomed me into their home as if I had always been an integral part of it. During all 4 years of studying at university and at the beginning of our careers, Kyle was my rock. He understood my family problems without judgment, hugged me when holidays with relatives brought me to tears, and sincerely rejoiced at my achievements when my own father didn't notice them. After graduating from university, I got a position in a marketing agency in Chicago, and Kyle got a job in an engineering consulting firm in the same city. We rented a small apartment, and our life together, away from the shadow of my family drama, was healing for me. I kept in touch with my father through obligatory, but usually brief and superficial, monthly calls. Regina, now a real estate agent and still living in Boston, continued to position herself as the caring daughter, not forgetting to remind me in rare conversations that she was the one looking after my father. By age 27, I had been promoted to head of marketing. I was leading campaigns for major clients and had earned recognition in the industry. Kyle had also advanced in his field, and our life together was happier than I could have imagined. The scars from our family life remained, but I had created a new life where I was valued and loved. Kyle proposed to me on our 5th anniversary. He planned an entire day that was reminiscent of our first dates. Breakfast at the cafe where we used to study, a visit to the Art Institute of Chicago that I loved, and dinner at an Italian restaurant where we celebrated graduating from college. When dessert arrived next to my tiramisu, I saw a small velvet box. "Angela," he said, taking my hands, "you've made these 5 years the best of my life. Your creativity, your kindness, and your strength amaze me every day. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" The ring was perfect, a vintage sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. In the joy of the moment, I cast aside any worries about breaking the news to my family. For one perfect evening, I just wanted to be happy. The next morning, I called my father. After exchanging the usual pleasantries, I took a deep breath and shared the news. "Dad, I wanted you to know. Last night, Kyle proposed to me, and I said yes." The pause that followed lasted a moment longer than it needed to. "Well, congratulations. he finally said, in a tone more suited to announcing a minor work accomplishment. He seems like a nice guy. Then came the practical questions about the date. No excitement. No questions about the proposal. Just logistics. Regina's reaction was even more telling. When I texted her the news and a photo of the ring, her response was so overdone in congratulations that it seemed downright insincere. Oh my God. Congratulations. Sis. So happy for you. The ring is so beautiful. The countless exclamation points couldn't hide what I knew was seething envy. Regina, at 33, had a string of short romances under her belt, but had never found anyone who was ready for a serious relationship. Despite my family's cool reaction, we began planning. We chose June Kynes, which gave us 9 months to plan. It suited Kyle's family, my closest friends, and, importantly, my father confirmed that he was available. I marked it on my calendar. He said during our next call, and there was indeed some enthusiasm in his voice. By the way, Dad, I began cautiously. I was hoping you would walk me down the aisle. Another pause. But this time when he spoke, I heard genuine emotion in his voice. I would be honored. Angela, that one moment of intimacy gave me hope that maybe my wedding would help heal the wounds between us. The next months were filled with venue inspections and dress fittings. We found a beautiful historic mansion near Chicago, with a garden terrace for the ceremony. Kyle's mother, Linda, accompanied me to many of these meetings, offering advice without imposing her opinions, and genuinely enjoying every detail. You will be the most beautiful bride, she said with tears in her eyes during my first fitting. At that moment, I felt the absence of my mother more acutely than ever. And Linda, sensing this, gently squeezed my hand. During the planning, I also became close to Kyle's uncle, Jake, his late father's brother. He was in his early 62s. A retired literature professor with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He never had a family of his own, but he adored Kyle and Matt as if they were his own sons. At family dinners, Jake always started talking to me about books and art, and his genuine enthusiasm was in stark contrast to the reaction of my own family. 5 months before the wedding, I began to notice warning signs. Regina had been dropping vague hints on Facebook and Instagram about some big event she was planning. When I called her, she was non-committal. But as our date approached, I saw more and more posts about searching for a location, discussing catering, mentioning June as a target month. A knot of anxiety began to form in my stomach. The bomb went off exactly 3 months before our wedding. Regina called me on a Sunday afternoon, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Angela, I wanted to tell you in person before you saw this on social media. I'm throwing a party to celebrate my career achievements. On June 15th, I finally reached my sales target to become a broker. And the company is throwing me a grand celebration. My blood ran cold. Regina, it's my wedding day. You got the invitation 8 months ago. Really, she pretended to be surprised. It must have slipped my mind when I was planning everything with the company. In any case, it's just a coincidence. My event will start earlier. At 11:00 a.m. At a country club. It's supposed to be over in time for your ceremony at 4. So it's perfect. Perfect, I repeated, my voice shaking. You're scheduling a party on my wedding day, knowing that Dad will have to choose. Dad can go to both events, she answered smoothly. He's so proud of my success. But I'm sure he will make it to your wedding. It's not that far. The country club was almost 2 hours away from our venue, which made it physically impossible for any guest from her event to make it to our ceremony, especially the bride's father. After hanging up, I immediately called my father, hoping that he would see through Regina's manipulation. Dad, did you know? Regina scheduled her work party for my wedding day. Yes. She mentioned it, he replied casually. An unfortunate coincidence. But such corporate events are hard to reschedule. This is a big achievement for her. But, Dad, How will you make it to both? You have to walk me down the aisle. I'll think of something. Angela. I'll go to the first part of Regina's event. And then I'll come to your ceremony. No need to make an issue of it. As the weeks went by, I could feel my father wavering. During our calls, he increasingly mentioned the traffic between venues, asked, "Can't we move the ceremony an hour later?" and debated whether I really needed him to be in the pre-wedding photos. Despite the growing tension, the wedding preparations continued. Final dress fittings, meetings with the photographer, approval of flower arrangements. It all kept me busy. Kyle and his family remained my support, although I could see that they were increasingly worried about my father's indecisiveness. And then, just 2 weeks before the wedding, the phone call confirmed my worst fears. It was a Tuesday night. I was going through the seating plan when my father's number popped up on the screen. "Angela," he began, his voice tense. "I need to talk to you about the wedding." The formality of his tone told me everything before he continued. "I've been thinking about the logistics of June 15th and realized I simply won't make it to the ceremony on time. Regina's event is very important for her career. And as a father, I have to be there from start to finish. There's no way I can make it on time." I clutched the phone tightly, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "So, you've decided not to walk me down the aisle at my own wedding. It's not a matter of choice," he said defensively. "It's a matter of practicality. Regina's event starts early, and I can't be in 2 places at once. Maybe you could ask Kyle's father to walk you. Or your friend's father. I'm sure someone else could do it." Someone else. Like walking your daughter down the aisle is a shift job that can be delegated to anyone. "I get it," I managed to say, my voice barely louder than a whisper. "I'll still come to the reception," he added, as if offering a generous compromise. "I think I'll make it by 7 or so." Mumbling a goodbye, I dropped the phone and collapsed on the floor in tears. Kyle found me there when he returned from work and immediately rushed to my side. "He's not coming," I sobbed on his shoulder. "He chose Regina's party instead of walking me down the aisle." Kyle hugged me tightly, his own anger obvious. "He doesn't deserve you." That night we discussed our options. Kyle cautiously suggested postponing the wedding. "We could pick another date," he said, "so your father wouldn't have an excuse." The thought crossed my mind, too. But something inside me rebelled. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not going to change our wedding because of Regina's manipulations. This is exactly what she wants." The next day, Kyle's mother, Linda, called and immediately sensed that something was wrong. I told her the whole story. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice full of motherly concern. "I can't believe your father did this to you. I don't know what to do." I confessed. Part of me wants to call and beg him to reconsider. But I know that's what Regina is waiting for. "Listen to me," Linda said firmly. "This is your day. Yours and Kyle's. Don't let anyone ruin it. Your father is making a choice he will regret for the rest of his life. But it is his burden, not yours." Her words gave me strength. But the question remained, who would walk me down the aisle? The idea of going alone seemed like a public admission that my father had rejected me. Later that week, Jake called me out of the blue. "Kyle told me what happened," he said softly. "I hope you don't mind." "Of course not," I replied, touched by his concern. "I know it's hard." Jake continued. "Family disappointments cut the deepest." Something in his tone told me he was speaking from personal experience. My own father refused to attend my college graduation because he disapproved of my choice to study literature rather than business. Some wounds never heal completely, but we learn to build a wonderful life in spite of them. His wisdom and kindness brought new tears to my eyes. "Thank you for understanding, Jake. Always. My dear. And remember, family is not just blood. Family is those who are there when it really matters." The week before the wedding, I was at an emotional low. The next morning, Linda invited me to lunch. In the quiet cafe, she seemed to be collecting her thoughts. "There's something you should know," she finally said. Something about Jake that might help you understand why he called. I looked up at her curiously. He's my late husband's brother, she explained. Their father had been a very strict, traditional man who had never forgiven Jake for choosing academia over the family construction business. But you may not know that I was married before my husband. A short, unsuccessful union in my youth. When I decided to marry Sam, my own father refused to come to the wedding because he thought it would be a disgrace for me to marry a second time. He said it would embarrass him in front of his friends. That's terrible, I whispered. It was Jake who offered to walk me down the aisle, she said with a slight smile. He understood what it was like to be abandoned by a parent. He told me, Linda, you deserve to be led by someone who celebrates your happiness, not judges it. Her story resonated deeply with me. I had no idea he did that for you. The hint was clear, but she was too tactful to say it outright. Do you think? I started hesitantly. Would it be inappropriate to ask Jake to walk me down the aisle? Linda's eyes filled with tears. Oh, my dear. I think it would mean the world to him. But it has to be your decision. The next day, I called Jake and invited him for coffee. He agreed immediately. When I arrived at the bookstore cafe, he was already there with 2 cups of coffee on the table. I took the liberty of ordering your usual, he said with a warm smile. Vanilla latte with an extra shot of espresso. The fact that he remembered such a small detail only confirmed what I already knew about his character. Gathering my courage, I said, Jake, I wanted to ask you something. He put down his cup, giving me his full attention. My father has decided that he won't walk me down the aisle. Linda told me how you helped her at her wedding, and how important it was to her. I wanted to ask, I would be very honored if you would agree to do the same for me. Jake's expression changed from surprise to deep emotion. For a moment, he seemed speechless, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Angela, he finally said, his voice shaking. I can't tell you what this means to me. Are you sure? Absolutely sure, I answered, feeling myself becoming more confident with each passing second. In the years I have known you, you have shown me more sincere interest and support than my father has shown in decades. I would be honored if you would walk me down the aisle. Jake reached across the table and took my hands. Then I accept this offer with all my heart. It will be one of the greatest honors of my life. The weight that had been pressing on me for weeks suddenly became lighter. Jake was right. Family is those who are close, not just shared DNA. The last days before the wedding flew by in a rush. I made one last attempt, calling my father 3 days before the celebration. Dad, I just wanted to confirm. You still plan to come to the reception? Yes. I should be able to after Regina's event, he answered absent-mindedly. Probably around 8. He swallowed hard. I also wanted you to know that I asked Kyle's uncle, Jake, to walk me down the aisle. Pause. Who, Jake? He's been very kind to me. I see. His tone was impenetrable. Well, I suppose someone has to do it. Since I can't. His dismissive response only confirmed that I had made the right decision. The night before the wedding, we had a small rehearsal dinner. Jake gave a toast that moved many to tears, saying that real family is those who support and celebrate your life. Later, while browsing social media, I saw Regina's posts about her celebration. The photos showed a modest gathering at her apartment, about 15 people at most. It wasn't a grand corporate event, just a casual get-together that she'd arranged specifically to create conflict. Instead of pain, I felt a strange clarity. On the day of the wedding, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows. The bridesmaids, the hairdresser, the makeup artist, everything was creating a festive atmosphere. But then a text came from my father, good luck today. Regina's event starts at 1100. If it ends early, maybe I'll make it by 7. Save me some cake. No word of regret. No congratulations. Just a reminder that Regina's party was the priority. Around noon, Jake knocked on the door, impeccably dressed in a tuxedo. He hadn't come empty-handed. I wanted you to have this today. he said, handing me a small box. Inside was a delicate vintage handkerchief with lace trim and embroidered blue flowers. Something old. Something blue, he explained. It belonged to my mother. Then he handed over a velvet pouch from Linda. Inside was a silver bracelet, with a pendant in the shape of crossed paintbrush, and feather a reminder of my childhood hobbies. The attention of these people, not related to me by blood, meant more to me than I could express in words. The ceremony was set for 4 o'clock. Jake was waiting for me in the hall before the garden terrace. "Ready?" he asked softly. I nodded. Unable to speak, he offered me his arm. And as the first notes of Pachelbel's canon began to play, the doors opened before us. Walking to the altar arm in arm with Jake, I felt a mixture of sadness over my father's absence and enormous gratitude to the man who had taken his place with such dignity. But all of this faded into the background when I saw Kyle's face, his eyes shining with love and delight. At that moment, I understood with absolute certainty that we were creating our own family, built on respect and genuine care. The reception was filled with laughter and dancing. As the evening wore on, I noticed my cousin Tim, my mother's nephew. He looked excited. "Sorry I'm late," he said, taking me aside. I stopped by Regina's first, thinking I'd hit both events. But Angela, you should know something about her party. This was not what she told everyone. This was not a work event, just a get-together at her house. He pulled out his phone and showed me his text messages with Regina, where she openly admitted that she had deliberately thrown a party on my wedding day to force my father to choose. The revelation was shocking and, at the same time, strangely confirming my suspicions. At about 9:30, when the reception was already winding down, my father appeared in the hall. He looked awkward, hesitantly holding a gift bag in his hands. "Congratulations," he said dryly. "Sorry I'm late. Regina's thing ran long. I'm glad you could come at least for the last hour." I couldn't help but be sarcastic. "It looks like it was a nice wedding," he noted, looking around. An awkward silence. "So who ended up walking you down the aisle?" he finally asked. "Jake, Kyle's uncle. The gentleman in the tuxedo over there." Father frowned. "You let a stranger walk you down the aisle. He's not a stranger to me," I said firmly. "He's shown more interest in my life and happiness than you have in the last decade. You missed my scholarship award because Regina lied to you. You forgot about my graduation. And now you've missed my wedding for Regina's fake party." "Fake party? What are you talking about?" At that moment, Tim came up to us. "Uncle Igor, what Angela says about the party is true. It wasn't a corporate event. I was there myself." Father looked at him with distrust, and then at Jake, who had approached us. "It must be you, the uncle who replaced me," Father said hostilely, ignoring Jake's outstretched hand. "Dad, stop it," I whispered, burning with shame. "I understand your frustration," Jake said calmly. "But today was important for Angela." "Important?" My father chuckled bitterly. "If it was so important, she wouldn't have scheduled it on the same day as her sister's event. My wedding was planned 9 months ago." I intervened. "It was Regina who set this all up. And Tim has proof." Tim reluctantly showed his father the text messages. His face grew paler as he read. "This can't be. Regina wouldn't do this. She's been doing this for years." "Dad." My voice broke. "She's been driving a wedge between us since Mom died. She lied about me not wanting you to walk me down the aisle." My father looked truly shocked. "She told me it would be humiliating for you because we weren't close." "That's not true. I always wanted you to be close." The realization seemed to hit my father with full force. "I need to talk to Regina," he said sharply, pulling out his phone. "Not now," I pleaded. "It's my wedding." But he had already stepped away, and we heard his angry voice through the doors of the hall. When he returned, his face was flushed. "Regina hung up on me. I'm going to her place." "Dad, please. Let's do this tomorrow." But he was adamant. "So you replaced me with him?" he demanded. pointing at Jake. Some random old man. Mr. Evans, Jake said calmly but firmly. I understand that you are upset. But today is Angela and Kyle's day. Don't tell me what kind of day it is. She is my daughter. Then perhaps you should have acted like her father. Jake answered evenly. Being a father means being there. Not when it's convenient. But when it matters most. The simple truth of these words hit my father like a slap in the face. He looked at Jake. At me. And his anger gave way to something like shame. I have to go, he said, and left the hall. We spent our honeymoon in Hawaii. When I returned, I found 5 voicemails from my father. Each one more contrite than the last. In the final one, he said, Angela, you were right about Regina. I talked to her. She confessed everything. She manipulated us both for years. I can't believe I was so blind. I'll understand if you never want to talk to me. But I hope that one day you'll give me a chance to make things right. I'm so sorry I missed your wedding. There's no forgiveness for that. There had been no word from Regina. A month later, my father and I met for coffee. It was a long, painful conversation with tears and mutual recriminations. But in the end, a glimmer of understanding dawned. I want to try to restore our relationship, he said. I know I don't deserve this. But I'd like to get to know the amazing woman you've become. I need time, I answered honestly. In the months that followed, we began a cautious reconciliation. 6 months after the wedding, we had our first family dinner together. Kyle's entire family, my father, and Tim were at the table. I'm grateful for second chances, my father said with tears in his eyes. And for a daughter whose ability to forgive amazes me every day. When it was Jake's turn to speak, he said, I'm grateful for the reminder that family is created by love and choice, not just biology. And I am especially grateful to have found another niece in Angela, whose courage and grace inspire me every day. As I looked around that table at the faces of people who truly cared about me, some by blood, some by choice, I realized that Jake had been right all along. Family isn't just about DNA. It's about who shows up when it matters most. Story 3. After 35 years of silent patience, I decided to destroy the life of the whole family in one day. When they started laughing at my husband's funeral, the small living room in our 3-story house in Richmond, Virginia smelled of white chrysanthemums. Andrew's simple pine coffin stood against the wall. I, Tamara Wilson, Sanchawu, sat nearby in a black dress, bought with the last of my money. My mother-in-law Gail whispered to her younger daughter Sandra, finally Tammy got rid of that electrician. Maybe now she'll find someone with money. Sandra, Censure, giggled. But now she has life insurance. We'll buy a car for Danny. Olivia, Arshaba, added, and we'll move Tammy into the basement room. I need space for my art studio. All 3 laughed, covering their mouths with tissues. I looked at the face of Andrew, the only one who loved me, who called me Tamara, not Tammy. He died of a heart attack at 40, leaving me with these people. For 35 years I heard thousands of phrases. Tammy isn't pretty, but she's smart. Let her work. Tammy is modest. She'll give her share to her sisters. Tammy, the eldest, should take care of the family. Being the older sister meant working from the age of 18, living in the smallest room, giving up college for Sandra's music degree and Olivia's various courses. Mother put her hand on my shoulder. Tammy, be strong. Think about your family. We depend on you. Not a drop of sympathy. Only calculation. We need to think about practical things, said Sandra. We have summer plans. Danny wants to go to summer camp. I need money for my certification exams. Mom is going to visit Aunt Lucy in Florida. They were planning to spend my dead husband's insurance money without waiting for the funeral to end. Mother has never said thank you in 35 years. The sisters are used to only taking. For the first time in my life, I felt not sadness, but rage. Pure, burning rage. Andrew used to say, "Tamara, you're too kind. They'll eat you alive." I answered, "This is Andrew's family. Where else can I go?" Now I knew the answer. In the evening, I sat in the kitchen, looking at our family portrait. Mother in the center. Beautiful Sandra and Olivia in new dresses. Army on the side in an old blouse. "Enough," I whispered into the void. 35 years is enough. They didn't know that quiet Tammy had become the most dangerous person in the house. I knew their secrets, controlled their money, and was no longer afraid of loneliness. The story of 35 years of silence. I was born in 1,988 inches, a family that immediately defined my role. My father died when I was 7. My mother was left with 3 daughters and announced, "Tammy isn't pretty, but she's smart. She'll work and support the family." While Sandra and Olivia, the beauties, will find rich husbands. Childhood ended early. At 8, I changed diapers for little Olivia, while Sandra played with Barbies. At 10, I cooked dinner for the whole family. At 12, I had a paper route, delivering newspapers so I could buy Sandra new shoes for school dances. Tammy doesn't mind. She's the big sister. My mother always explained to the neighbors when they seemed surprised. At 14, my math teacher told my mother, "Tamara has real talent. She could get into MIT or Stanford." At home, my mother threw a fit. "College costs money. This money is needed for Sandra's future, Olivia's studies." So at 16, I graduated from community college and went to work as a cashier at Walmart. My entire paycheck went to Olivia's SAT prep courses and Sandra's music lessons. Sandra was blossoming. A tall blonde with blue eyes. A real beauty. At 18, she married the son of a car dealership owner. The wedding cost $22. Ling ling ling. All my savings from 3 years of work. This is an investment in the future of the whole family. Sandra will live well, Mother said. But after 2 years, Sandra got divorced and returned home with her 3-year-old son Danny. "I will never marry again," she said. "All men are bastards." Olivia chose the path of an eternal student. In 10 years, she changed majors 5 times, but never received a degree. My Olivia is educated. She's finding herself. Her mother was proud. And I worked more and more. I became a bookkeeper, then a chief accountant with a salary of $3.200 a month. But I only kept $1.500 for myself. The rest went to family needs. I lived in the smallest room on the first floor next to the kitchen. Sandra and Danny occupied a large, bright room on the second floor. Olivia lived in the middle room. Mother, in the most spacious one on the third floor. Tammy is fine anywhere. She's not picky. Mother explained this arrangement. At 30, I met Andrew at a bus stop. My grocery bags fell, and he helped me pick up the spilled oranges. A union electrician. A simple, kind man with a heart of gold. "Tamara, they're using you," he said when he found out about my family. "You deserve better. This is my family." Andrew. Where would I go? We dated for 2 years, and I was afraid to bring him home. In 2015, we got married modestly at City Hall, then had dinner at Olive Garden. I spent my savings on new furniture for Olivia. 8 years with Andrew became the only happy years in my life. He called me Tamara. Bought flowers for no reason. Respected my work. "Are you ever going to get tired of being this family's ATM?" he warned. The breaking point, the turning point came the day after the funeral. When the family decided to discuss my future without the slightest respect for my grief, I was sitting in the kitchen at 7:00 a.m., drinking coffee and looking at Andrew's empty chair. My mother came down first, disheveled and grumpy. "Tamara, we need to talk," she said. "You can't mourn forever. We have plans." Soon Sandra and Olivia appeared in expensive pajamas that I'd bought them. "Tammy," began Mother in the tone one would use to talk to a sick child. "Life goes on, and one must think practically." Sandra took the initiative. Andrew was a good man. But let's be honest. He didn't leave a fortune. But there is life insurance. The insurance lady called. Olivia added. 165美元. Ling ling ling. Not a bad sum. 165,000 for my husband's life. They already made inquiries the day after the funeral. This money needs to be spent wisely for the common good. The mother explained. Sandra counted on her fingers. Danny needs a car for $44. Ling ling ling. I need to finish my interior design certification for $33. Ling ling ling. And I need to visit my sister in Miami. Added mother. 10美元. 000 for the trip. I sat silent, listening to how they divided my dead husband's insurance. And then, continued Sandra, you need to look decent for your next husband. With the remaining money, get your teeth fixed. Buy normal clothes. And we also need to reconsider the housing situation, said mother. You're alone now. You don't need a big room. And Danny is growing. We thought you would move to the storage room in the basement. We'll fix it up. And Danny will take your room. The storage room. They wanted to move me to the storage room. It's temporary. Olivia hurried to add. Until you get married again. And by the way, Sandra smiled. Next time, choose a richer groom. I don't want to offend Andrew's memory. But an electrician. Well, you understand. You can't live on love alone. Mother agreed. Money is more important. Look at yourself. Olivia added. You've been working for 35 years. And what do you have? A small room and a dead electrician husband. Silence hung over the kitchen. I looked at these people who were planning my life 12 hours after the funeral. Okay. I said. I'll think about it. What's there to think about? Sandra was surprised. It's all logical. We'll spend the money usefully. You'll move into the basement. Find a new husband. For the first time in my life, something broke inside me. 35 years of obedience suddenly ended. The discovery of Power One spent the next 3 weeks in a strange state. Outwardly, everything was as usual. But inside, something had changed dramatically. I went to work, cooked dinner, did the laundry. But now I watched the family with completely different eyes. And what I saw shocked me. It turned out that in 35 years of silence, I had accumulated enormous power over these people. I just didn't realize it. I was not a victim, but the holder of all the keys to their existence. The first discovery concerned money. I sat down at my computer and analyzed the family budget for the last 5 years, using QuickBooks. The figures were shocking. My salary of $3.200 made up 90% of the family's total income. My mother received Social Security of $1. Senbai Archer. But spent half of it on medication. Sandra hadn't officially worked anywhere for 3 years. Occasionally, she did manicures at home for pennies. Olivia received financial aid of $440, which she spent on cosmetics and Starbucks. Over 5 years, I brought home $429. Ling ling ling. And spent maybe $44. 000 on myself. The rest went to family needs. Renovations to my sister's rooms. Clothes for them and Danny. Food. Utilities. Medicine for mother. And Olivia's endless college courses. But the most important thing was the house. A 3-story house in downtown Richmond cost $275. Ling ling ling. I bought it with an FHA mortgage 8 years ago when we moved from a 2-bedroom apartment. The family was delighted with the spacious rooms and modern renovation. But only my name was on the deed. And I was the only one paying the monthly mortgage of $2. Lambe. I still had 88. 000 left to pay. The second discovery was their secrets. 35 years of living in the same house. And I knew about their every step. Every conversation. Every secret. They were used to not noticing quiet Tammy and discussed their affairs in front of me as if I were furniture. Sandra had been dating married Robert Peterson, a city council member, for 2 years. He promised to divorce his wife and marry her. Regularly gave her money for beauty treatments. $1. $100 a month. Sandra lied that she worked as a manicurist. But in fact she was supported by someone else's husband. She even had a separate iPhone to contact her lover, which she hid in her makeup bag. Olivia hadn't studied at all for 3 years. Instead of going to college, she worked as a brand ambassador at Town Center Mall, handing out flyers and working promotional events. She earned $2. $200 a month. But at home, she talked about her difficult studies and important projects. She didn't need a degree. She dreamed of marrying a rich mall client. She even had fake transcripts with fake grades. Mother also lied. She received not $1, 320 inches, Social Security, but $1, 980 plus veterans benefits, as a widow of a Vietnam vet. She saved the extra money for a rainy day without telling her daughters. Over 5 years, she saved $22. Ling ling ling. Which she kept in a separate Bank of America account. But the most shocking thing was the third discovery. They had been planning to get rid of me for a long time. I accidentally overheard their conversation when I returned from work earlier than usual. They were sitting in the kitchen and discussing their plan. When Tammy gets married and moves out, we'll sell the house, said Mother. We'll split the $275. 000, equally among the 4 of us. Why 4? Sandra was surprised. She bought the house. The house was bought with family money. Mother answered firmly. We all live here, so we all have a right to a share. They planned to marry me off to take possession of the house, and they considered it completely fair. Then I realized the extent of my power. Without my salary, they wouldn't be able to pay utilities, buy groceries, or maintain the house. Without my mortgage payments, Wells Fargo would foreclose in 3 months. But I had something else. Over the years of working as a chief accountant, I had made connections in various organizations, people at the IRS, at banks, at property management companies. Some were good friends. Some owed me favors. If I wanted, I could audit any income, freeze any accounts, create problems with documentation. And I also had records. For many years, I kept a detailed diary of expenses in Excel. Wrote down all family conversations that seemed important. Now, I understood that these weren't just records, they were evidence. Evidence of Olivia's lies about her studies, Sandra's affair with a married official, Mother's hidden income, the plan. I spent a week thinking about the plan. I could just leave, rent an apartment, start a new life. But that would be running away. And they deserved a lesson. 35 years of humiliation. And now plans to sell my house and get rid of me like an unwanted piece of furniture. No. It was time to show them who really runs this family. And what happens when quiet Tammy stops being quiet? The plan matured by Danny's birthday. The family planned to celebrate at home. Invite his friends. Throw a party. The perfect opportunity for a public revelation. The birthday revelation, Danny's birthday. April 23. There was the day when Silent Tamara died, and a completely different woman took her place. By 7:00 p.m. The house was filled with guests. Danny's classmates, neighbors, and several relatives came. Sandra dressed up in a new dress, bought with her lover's money. Olivia played the role of a caring aunt. Although I bought the present for my nephew, Mother played the role of a hospitable hostess. Treating everyone to cookies, I baked with my money. I sat in the corner of the living room and watched this performance. I had a folder with documents in my hands, which no one noticed. Danny, congratulations on your 16th birthday, Mother proclaimed, raising her glass. You've become a young man, and we have a surprise for you. Sandra smiled slyly. We've been saving up and decided to give you a car, used but good. The guests gasped with admiration. Danny's friend Steve whistled enviously. Wow. You're lucky. Danny. Danny blushed with joy. Mom. Grandma. Seriously, a car, of course. My darling, Mother beamed. Aunt Tammy gave us money from her late husband's insurance. 44美元. Ling ling ling. Just enough for a good used car. My time had come. I stood up and said loudly, sorry to interrupt the party. But I need to clarify something. Everyone turned to me. Mother frowned. Tamara. We agreed. Not now. Right now. I answered calmly. Danny. Happy birthday. But no one is going to buy you a car. There was silence. Sandra stood up. Tamara. What are you talking about? We discussed everything. You discussed it. I corrected. But I didn't agree to spend my late husband's life insurance on a car for a teenager. I took the documents out of the folder. This is a certificate from Prudential Insurance. 165美元. 000 has been transferred to my personal Chase account and will remain there. Mother turned pale. Tamara. We are a family. You can't be so selfish. Selfish. I laughed. I supported this family for 35 years. Let's count in front of everyone. I unfolded the financial printouts. Over the past 5 years, I earned $429. Ling ling ling. Spent 44 000 on myself. The rest went to you. The guests looked at each other in bewilderment. Tamara. Why are you making a scene in front of people? Olivia tried to interrupt. Because you announced in front of people that you would spend my money. I answered. Now you will learn the truth about yourselves in front of people. I turned to Sandra. Sandra. Tell the guests where you get money for new dresses. After all, you haven't officially worked for 3 years. Sandra was confused. I work part-time doing manicures. That's not true. I interrupted and took out the phone bill printouts. You've been dating a married man. Robert Peterson from City Council. For 2 years. He supports you for $1. 100 a month. The guests gasped. Neighbor, Mrs. Patterson shook her head. So that's what's going on. You were spying on me, Sandra screamed. I lived in the same house with you for 35 years. I answered calmly. It's hard not to notice the second phone and the midnight conversations. I turned to Olivia. And you? Olivia. Tell everyone about your studies at VCU. Olivia turned pale. What do you mean? You haven't studied for 3 years. You work as a brand ambassador at Town Center Mall. Handing out flyers for $2. 200 a month. Your transcripts are fake. I pulled out photos of Olivia in a promotional uniform. Last week you were advertising Pizza Hut. And at home, you talked about your interior design degree. The guests started murmuring. Danny's classmate asked in surprise, Miss Olivia. Is this true? Olivia burst into tears. Tamara. Why are you doing this? And now, Mom. I turned to my mother. Tell everyone about your Social Security. My mother jumped up. Enough. Stop this circus. What circus? I'm telling the truth. Your Social Security isn't $1. Sembe Archer. But $1. 980 plus votre bénéfice. In 5 years you saved $22. 0 inches. A separate account without saying a word to your daughters. I showed the Bank of America statements. Here's a certificate. The account is in the name of Gail Wilson. The balance is $23. Sembe Archer. The neighbors exchanged glances, clearly condemning the deception. And most importantly, I said, raising my voice. Yesterday, I accidentally overheard your family council. You are planning to marry me off to take possession of the house. You want to sell it for $275. 000, and divide it equally among the 4 of us. Mother tried to justify herself. We didn't mean to be cruel. We just thought the house was bought with family money. I interrupted. Here's the mortgage agreement from Wells Fargo. Borrower me. Co-signer none. Monthly payment, $2. Lambe. I'm the only one paying. I still owe the bank $88. Ling ling ling. I opened the deed. The house is registered in my name only. You live here, as tenants, free tenants. The silence was deafening. Danny asked in confusion, Aunt Tammy. What will happen now? I looked at him with pity. The boy wasn't to blame for the greed of adults. Now, Danny. There will be justice. Mom. Sandra. Olivia. You have a month to find jobs and a place to rent. What? Sandra screamed. Are you throwing us out on the street? I'm stopping supporting grown healthy people. I answered calmly. From May 1st. Utility bills, food, and other expenses are your responsibility. And from June 1st, either pay me market rent for the rooms or find another place to live. Mother clutched her chest. Tamara, come to your senses. We're family. Family doesn't plan to get rid of a relative for money. I answered harshly. For 35 years I've been your cash cow. Now the cow has rebelled. I stood up and addressed the guests. Sorry for ruining the party. But sometimes the truth is more important than politeness. Neighbor Mrs. Patterson nodded. You're doing the right thing. Tamara, we've long wondered how they exploit you. I headed for the door, but turned around. Oh. And I'm changing the locks tomorrow. You'll get keys when you find jobs. Behind me. I heard screams. Crying. Accusations. But I didn't turn around anymore. 35 years of silence were over. My new life had begun. The new life. The next 3 months were the most amazing of my life. For the first time in 35 years, I lived for myself and watched as the world of people who considered me a meek servant collapsed. On the morning of April 24, I changed all the locks. When the family woke up, their keys no longer worked. Sandra knocked on the door. Tamara, let me in. I have to go to work. What work? I answered through the door. You don't work. Go to Robert Peterson. Let him support you. Olivia was sobbing. I have to go to school. To the mall to hand out flyers. You'll get keys when you get a real job. By the end of the week, a miracle happened. All three found work. Sandra got a job as a sales associate at Macy's for $2. Bai Wuxer. Olivia officially registered as a brand ambassador. Mother got a job as a janitor at a daycare for $1. Bai Wuxer. You see, I said, handing out the new keys. When push came to shove, everyone was able to work. Without my money, the family faced reality. Utility bills, $1. Senbai Archer. Groceries for $4, Lambe. Other expenses. Their total income was $6. Lubai. Expenses $7. Sibei. Tamara. We can't make it. Mother came a month later. There isn't enough money. Use your savings, I suggested. Arshar Mayuan. 000 will last several months. This is my money for old age, and what was my money for? By June, they realized they couldn't afford the house. I suggested, pay $1. 100 per room, or look for other housing. Sandra was outraged. San Mayuan. 300 for the house. Highway robbery, market price in downtown Richmond. I answered calmly. Without a common enemy. They began to quarrel among themselves. Sandra accused Olivia of not earning enough. Olivia reproached Mother for hiding money. Mother accused her daughters of greed. If Tamara hadn't gotten angry, everything would be the same. Mother shouted. You yourself suggested selling her house, Sandra snapped. My life changed dramatically. For the first time, I spent money only on myself. I renovated. Bought new furniture and clothes. Signed up for Spanish classes at VCU. Got a cat named Whiskers. No one demanded reports on my expenses. Didn't ask for loans. Didn't plan my future. In the evenings I read. Watched Netflix. Learned to play guitar. My neighbors changed their attitude. They used to say, poor Tamara. Her family exploits her. Now they respected me. Good for you. You put them in their place. It was time to show some backbone. By the end of the year, the family had accepted the rules. They paid for rooms. Bought groceries. Didn't ask for money. The relationship became cold but fair. The only one who made me happy was Danny. Aunt Tammy. You were right, the young man said. Mom and Grandma really did use you. In the fall, I decided to sell the house and move to another state. Not for revenge, but for myself. It was time to start a new life. 1 year later, a year later, I'm sitting in my apartment in Austin, Texas, drinking my morning coffee and smiling. The house in Richmond sold for $275. Ling ling ling. Every dollar went to the rightful owner. The family demanded a share through court. But the lawyers laughed. The house was in your name. You paid the mortgage. Case closed. With the money I got, I bought a 2-bedroom condo, and the rest went into a Vanguard index fund. I got a job as a chief accountant at a tech startup. Young team. Good salary. No one knows my past. Yoga in the evenings. Spanish classes. Books. Whiskers purrs on my lap. A simple life that I dreamed of. Only Danny calls. He got into Virginia Tech. Earns his own money for tuition. Aunt Tammy. You taught me the main thing, never support anyone for free. I met Michael. A software engineer. Movies. Flowers. No demands. When I told him about my family, he was amazed. How did you last 35 years? I didn't know it could be different. A neighbor wrote from Richmond, former family living in a 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts, constantly fighting over money. Sandra never remarried. Olivia working as a cashier at CVS. Mother complaining about ungrateful daughters. I'm not sorry. They got what they deserved. And I got the freedom to be myself. At 36. I finally live my own life. Sometimes it's better to find the courage to say, enough, and start over. Loneliness in freedom is better than the best company in slavery. My new life.